game changer, will help us to do all of those three more effectively and efficiently. And then the policies, procedures, and funding, leadership, people, and culture. We want to highlight leadership here. I'll explain that in a minute. And then transforming also the curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment. So this is like the vision of how we want to create like a good ecosystem for our students to learn. But the key of all is the one on the top left corner, which is the agency, influence, and support from all stakeholders, including students or learners. What we mean by this is that it's not enough about the government. Like the improvement of education quality should be like a movement, like a national movement, and it includes like all stakeholders in the society. So it's not just about the teachers or the educational institutions, but also family, the employers or industry, and the society in general. So this is what we want, that we are at the moment actually creating the sense of this is a movement and all stakeholders should be involved in this to make it happen for all our students, our children, who will be our leaders of the future. I don't want to maybe like go through like the initiatives because that will be very long. But what I want to stay in this slide is that where we want to go, the transformation that we want to create is first to ensure that learning is a joyful experience, and to create an education system which is more open so that all stakeholders can collaborate, and the role of the teachers focusing on the facilitators of learning. So not like the teachers who know everything, but they facilitate learning to address the individual needs of the students. And the pedagogy, the curriculum and assessment that is more based on competency and values based. The approach, student-centered or learner-centric, more personalized approach. Technology as the game changer. And then creating programs that are more relevant to the industry. So how we can make this connection. People who are in the industry should also be more involved in the education. And then the freedom to innovate for schools, universities, give them like the support, the policies that can stimulate and cultivate the culture of innovation in schools and universities, and in the agency of all stakeholders. So it's not just about the government, but all parties need to be involved. And especially in a country like Indonesia, where you have more than almost 50 million students, and then 300,000 schools across 6,000 of 17,000 of islands that are inhabited. 6,000 are inhabited in our country. So it's a massive movement, and we cannot, government can never do it alone. So in terms of like the transformation for teacher development, so this is how we are seeing it. First, that the top is about the learner, it's about the students, and this is the mindset that that we want to change, because believe it or not, at the moment, I think the culture in the system is still more about the compliance to the regulation. So I think we need to change this mindset. The most important party to serve for every teacher is the learner. It's not about the administrative requirement, it's not about the compliance, but it's for what is best for the learner. So to give teachers the confidence for believing in this and then making decisions based on what is in the best interest of the learner, I think it's something that in our policy design and our programs, we need to keep sending this message and keep reinforcing that. And then the idea of the lighthouse schools here is that this is the agency, like the agency of all stakeholders. It's not enough for a school to be good on their own. So what we are trying to create all across Indonesia is the lighthouse schools, where the schools can be the agents of change for other schools, like helping other schools. So to collaborate together, we have a value in Indonesia called gotong royong, which is like collaboration, but collaboration that is based on social empathy and social responsibility. That is like one of our cultural values that are shared by hundreds of different cultures in Indonesia. that we think that we need to tap into in order to leapfrog. So it's not enough that you are good on your own. You have to have like the empathy and responsibility to make others as good as you too, or maybe even better. So by having this value ingrained in our design and our program, and it's also emphasized that sense of movement again as a national to improve the education system. And in terms of teachers, we have like 5 core programs. The first one, and this is the leadership, it's about transforming educational leadership. We all know that when the leader is good, and the school will also be good. Um, and when that good leader is removed or assigned to another school, that school will be shaky again. Um, in Indonesia, I think we have neglected this for quite a long period of time. So what we want to what do we mean by transforming educational leadership? We want to strengthen the philosophy or the vision of instructional leadership. So the school principal and supervisor should serve as the instructional leaders when the principal or the supervisor are instructional leaders. They don't just understand that about the student-centered learning and can do it. They or model it for other teachers, but they can also mentor and coach other teachers. And this is the key: mentoring and coaching other teachers, so that in every school we have like the mentor and coach, and the teacher development will be school based instead of at the moment it's still more like the external, like teachers go to other places, maybe in a meeting in the hotel or in some like government buildings, and to do workshop. They are being removed from their ecosystem, which is the school. When the teacher development is school based, we believe that first it will be more relevant. Second, it will problem solve immediately what is happening with the situation of student learning in that school. So it will be it will be more efficient and effective, and it will also create like that other coaches or mentors in that school, so that that ecosystem will be very dynamic. So this is why at the moment we are launching programs for school leadership or education leadership that has this kind of vision, which is making them to be instructional leaders or basic that philosophy. And the second one is pre-service teacher education. And this is also something that we need to strengthen very much, because at the moment this area has been neglected too, in a way that we don't strengthen our capacity to keep up with what is the latest update in how we produce teachers. And the third one is developing center of excellence for teacher learning in every province. We have 34 provinces in Indonesia, scattered around all of these islands. And at the moment, the centers of excellence for teacher learning are only located mainly in Java. So one of the 5 big islands in Indonesia. So therefore, how like teachers want to develop, they have to travel very far and they have to wait for their turn. We cannot serve all because it's very limited. So what we want to push is to create a center of excellence for teacher learning in every province. And then number 4 is empowering education communities to also like do programs, great programs that focus on what we want to see in our students, our student graduate profile, which focuses on 3 areas: literacy, numeracy, and character. We believe these are like the core competencies that are flexible, that can, because it's not based on content anymore. Literacy is across content, numeracy is the same, and character is the same. This to anticipate like the current generation, which is everything is keep changing, content is everywhere. So what we need to strengthen is the core competencies, which is literacy, numeracy, and character. So the education communities that have like good programs can work together with the government to make it happen. And then number 5 is revising regulations and governance. Believe it or not, like every time like we create a policy in Indonesia, we're thinking about 512 local governments that have the autonomy to implement it according to their context, and the sense making of how the policy is interpreted is not easy. So you imagine like 512 plus 34, so 548 possible contextual variations that we also have to think in terms of policy. So this is another area that to support like the teacher development in Indonesia. So this is the number of teachers in Indonesia. We have around 3 million teachers and principals, 2.7 million teachers, 275 principals, and 24,000 supervisors. And this is they are in about 300,000 schools all across Indonesia. I will, oh, okay. This is the context at the moment that we have only about 231 master teacher trainers that work to train teachers in our centers for development empowerment teachers, educational personnel that I mentioned earlier, but in Java. So basically, they can only reach up to, in our calculation, 350,000, 357,000 teachers every year, and which is not really enough to meet like the target population of teacher. So only 12% that can be reached through this master teacher trainer. So that's why we need to empower the communities. We need to work strategically with a lot of strategic partners to make sure that our teachers can get the best training continuously. Now, I will end my presentation to talk a little bit about the bilingual education in Indonesia. I think this is also what was requested of me to talk a little bit. We see there is a tension in terms of bilingual education in Indonesia. We believe that this can be more massive, but at the moment, of course, there are supporting factors and challenges that we're facing. Well, we acknowledge that the bilingual education can support the cognitive and social advantages because students or workforce that have the bilingual or multilingual competencies will have advantages when they work cognitively. They can be more critical because they can see things from different perspective. There is an acknowledgement that when you can speak of a foreign language or more than one language, it's a symbol of modern identity and a mark of an educated person. And academic advantage because you can access information in English, especially in English in this context that maybe others cannot understand. So this is something that make students that have good English or other foreign languages have an advantage over other students. But at the same time, in the history of maybe in the past 20 years, we've been dealing with these challenges. The first one is this global and local dilemma, right? The penetration of global values, because it's not just about the language, but also about the values that are seen or perceived can be impacting the local culture, local language and cultural context too. So there is a fear, for instance, that the vernacular languages will be diminished because people, instead of learning these local languages, they want to learn a foreign language on top of the national language, Indonesian language. And the problem of the number of teachers who are qualified by this, we mean, of course, in terms of English, they can speak English well. We have also got reports that the teachers of English cannot speak English and they just stick to the grammar. And also the support for quality teaching that we also need to push, so then they can support the implementation of the bilingual education. So all of this make, I think, the bilingual education maybe not growing as fast as we would hope. So we are still dealing with this, and maybe we can maybe learn from other countries that in this conference. I think that is all for my presentation. Thank you so much. I think I'll over to you, Bu Chair Lim. JP.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iwan. Very, very insightful sharing. We can see many, many comments coming already, just appreciating your very sincere and very informative sharing. I have a few questions for you later, but in the meantime, I would like to invite Ms. Susan Leong, the Center Director for SEMIO RELC, to share on teachers' development, what the RELC has been doing. Um, and over to you, Susan.
Okay, thank you, Cheng Pia. Good afternoon from Singapore to Dr. Iwan and every member on the panel and the members of the audience, ladies and gentlemen. There are at least 400 of you, and it's a bit disconcerting to speak without seeing any faces. That's not what we are used to. I think there are also many of you I see from the chat from all around the world, including Peru, of course, in Indonesia. So I'm sure it is midnight or early morning for many of you. And thank you for staying awake and joining us for this. I've been given a very short time to do this. And I think our topics, I'm not very sure whether it will match. But today's session, 1 hour, is about teacher development in Indonesia. And thank you, Pak Iwan, for your very interesting and informative sharing. I learned quite a lot about the challenges of what you have in Indonesia. I think the scale of what you face in Indonesia in terms of the number of students, teachers, the geographic spread is clearly quite different and it's a very huge challenge. My great admiration to you and your country for handling such a huge challenge to educate all the children in your country. It is something that is really very difficult. I think now I'm representing another totally different perspective. Indonesia is at one end of the spectrum where the scale is very, very large in numbers. And therefore, they have many very different challenges, not to mention the range of environments that teachers have to teach in and so forth. I'm just representing SEMIO RELC, which is, of course, in Singapore, and we're the only SEMIO center in Singapore. We are almost at the other end of the spectrum, as small as you can get. And the main point of being a SEMIO center really is, given that we are very small, we are just contributing what we can to support and bring up the level of the region in the area that we are specializing in. So with that little bit of preamble, allow me to share screen. And I have got a few slides to share. Okay, share here, sorry, wrong one. Okay, so I will just start by giving you a bit of background and what we do. And hopefully we can see that even though we are both at two ends of the spectrum, there could be some ground in between that we can work together or support each other for the larger mission of developing students. So really, SEMIO RELC is the only SEMIO center in Singapore, and our mission is dedicated to the development of language education in the region and the promotion of international cooperation among language professionals. So I reiterate my point just now. Pak Iwan talked about a really large overview of Indonesia overall education. Here I'm looking at the microcosm of just language education and about language professionals. So, and this is from the perspective of SEMIO RELC in Singapore. So even though we are over 50 years old, we understand very clearly we play a very, very small role, but hopefully it will be helpful in a multiplying effect in many countries. Our vision is to be the center of excellence in language education and research for the region and beyond. Just to share that SEMIO RELC, since its inception, has been offering scholarships to teachers from all member countries in Southeast Asia, that's 11 now in SEMIO, to study in RELC. There are many scholarship courses offered. So I'll just share with you the range, and these have changed through time, but this is the existing portfolio we have. And essentially, these are teacher training courses. They are meant for in-service teachers, so they're inset training. It is expected that the teachers are practicing teachers. And I take note of what Pak Iwan said about it's best to train them in school for the leaders. Our humble contribution is that in RELC, we believe in some short courses and some longer courses to extend the teachers, taking them a little away from their busy life in classrooms, and then being able very powerfully to interact with other teachers in the region to really enlarge their perspectives beyond their own classroom as well as their own country. So you can see there are many common things we share, many issues, many challenges. There are also many common solutions we can use and come together to improve the learning of languages for our students. Of course, we are largely talking about English language here. So these are the range of courses we have in CMEO RELC at the present moment. There are about 2 or 3 categories. I'll just focus on the left side first. These are really the shorter courses. They are usually 3 weeks long. They are advanced specialist or specialist certification courses. There are 5 titles here you see now in various skills which are core to teaching English language specifically, though generally some of these skills can be also used across languages. So we talked about reading and writing, teaching, listening and speaking, language assessment, which is a very hot topic at the moment, as well as teaching it as an international language, as well as developing teacher leaders and supervisors who can also act as mentors and coaches for their colleagues in the same school or in the same region. In addition, on the right-hand side, I draw your attention to the 2 courses named here. These are longer courses. The first one, the Postgraduate Diploma in Applied Linguistics, actually is about 6 months long. It's a blended course that we offer now. We have been offering it blended since 2013, which means that some of the modules are done face-to-face in a classroom on site in RELC Singapore, and some modules, about half, are done actually at home from the various student course participants in their own respective countries, and there's communication online and they interact using a learning portal. So we thought that this is a good adaptation to the new era since 2013, as I shared. This diploma has been offered continuously since 1972. It's our flagship course without interruption. And it was first offered and is largely offered as a face-to-face course until 2013. And in that year, I think we realized that students are increasingly living in a connected world using the internet. And we felt part of the skills we could help impart is what better way than to teach students by making them experience it themselves. So we actually came up with this blended program whereby the course participants who are actually teachers will experience what it is like to be learning online. And the feedback has been good because many teachers are telling us that they actually came across new issues they were not familiar with if they were not course participants in a course that is online that perhaps their students might be doing eventually. And of course, this is all in good time when we have COVID hitting us this year. So we went basically cautiously from a blended mode, and all of us are forced, as mentioned earlier on, we are forced to go completely online teaching. So we go from a face-to-face to a blended mode to a completely online mode. And we all know there are different skills needed for the teachers as well as the students. And there are various learning obstacles and hurdles we have to come across. Some are difficult to overcome, some are easier as long as they have experienced it. And we have also moved some of our courses completely online because we cannot meet the students face-to-face in these circumstances. But we felt that the learning they got from doing an online course is actually very valuable, that they can then go on classes largely online in some cases. I also want to speak a little about the Masters in TESOL that we offer in conjunction with the Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. This is a 1-year-long program. Again, both these programs have gone through lots of changes this year in response to COVID, but it's just that we all have to adapt. And I'm happy there are students that are willing to work with us so that we can carry on the professional development of teachers relatively uninterrupted despite COVID. And the final one I want to draw your attention to is the bottom left. Okay, to reach out to a particular segment of teachers from the region, RELC has since 2018 been offering scholarships to selected secondary school teachers of English to attend this certificate course in English language teaching for secondary school, or CELT-S in short. This is offered by Cambridge Assessment English. And this is actually the start. I did this as one of the flagship points in our 50th anniversary celebration. This is an in-service teacher professional development course that CMEO RELC is partnering with Cambridge Assessment English. With the way we're offering it is a blended version. The course helps teachers to improve the quality of their classroom practice by developing and extending their knowledge and skills, which actually is deepening and broadening one's knowledge of what one teaches is the first general competency highlighted in the Southeast Asian Teachers Competency Framework, which was issued by CMEO also in 2018. So we are aligning what we are teaching or what we see teachers' development needs to be with what CMEO has come up with that teachers need as well. The course also focuses on appropriate strategies, methods, and materials teachers need to teach language effectively and to engage their learners. All these areas address another general competency highlighted in the Southeast Asian Teachers Competency Framework here, which is to understand how students learn. So I'll quickly go on. I think I've exceeded my time. That teachers who successfully complete the course and meets its requirements will obtain the globally recognized CELT-S qualification, as well as the TKT Certificate Module 1 from Cambridge Assessment English. In addition, just briefly highlight, CMEO RELC also offers many customized courses for teachers and teacher educators in these areas. I won't read them out. For teachers and teacher educators, as well as language proficiency courses. This is to meet the very different needs of our Southeast Asian region, where the different countries may have different learning needs and priorities. Okay, with that, I think I'll stop. Thank you, Champion.
Thank you, Susan.
I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you. So may I invite Dr. Iwan and Susan on this virtual screen for some discussion. And Dr. Iwan, thank you again for sharing very insightful information on Indonesia and how, as a Director General of the Ministry of Education of Indonesia, you would like to take Indonesia into Education 4.0. And then, of course, Indonesia is the largest economy in ASEAN and the 10th largest economy in the world. You have a lot of young population. And also, just to quote from one of your social media posting, you say that Indonesia is in a mission to transform Indonesia by rethinking education and redesigning learning for current and future learners. And then in your sharing today, you say that teachers are mentors and also coaches to young people to prepare them to participate in a more interconnected world, but also appreciate culture differences. So like what Susan mentioned as well, we all are very, very respectful and of how Indonesia, such a large country, very diverse, as not just geographically, but also in locations and in the schools spread out. You must have a lot of challenges to implement large-scale teachers development programs in Indonesia, especially taking into consideration what you have just shared about Merdeka Belajar. All stakeholders in the ecology that will make it successful. We all know that it is not difficult to come up with a fantastic strategy on paper, but the challenge is really in the monitoring of the progress. So would you like to share with us some of the challenges and how do you think you want to implement or monitor the implementation?
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. The question is very much is what I'm wrestling every day. This is not easy at all, of course. And I think I don't think like we never lack of good ideas. It's just about all about the implementation. I think one of the uh, reality that for me, like since becoming the director general, is that to understand like the real challenges of this implementation. We have, like I mentioned earlier, about 514 local governments plus 34 provinces that have like local autonomy. So no matter what you try to decide, and you have like all of these local governments that have the autonomy by law to implement according to how they see fit, and and it's not. I think the system, we need to clean up like a lot of things in the system, like the regulation, and also it also involves the communication, like the top level communication to coordinate this, and therefore making it implementable. However, I think what we see as the game changers I mentioned earlier is technology. I think technology has created this opportunity for us. And I'm saying this also as a reflection from what is happening, the COVID that's happening at the moment. I think all around the world, we are seeing like how teachers, educators are getting more used to using the technology. The main challenge of the technology adoption in Indonesia before COVID, like we did like some kind of small research on this, is not the capability, not the ability to use technology, but the anxiety. So our teachers and educators, before they start to use technology, already feel anxious, just like learners in general, right? So when you have like this mental block, so any learning cannot happen. So COVID has reduced that anxiety, because there's like we are conditioned to do that and we don't have other options. So we believe with technology, and we're building like the national technology platform at the moment to solve not only so first to solve the administrative issue, so the school leaders and teachers can do like this routine mundane admin schools things more automatically, so then they can then have more time to do what's more important, which is serving the students. Like creating a report maybe that takes maybe 2 months can be done in 10 minutes, right? So imagine that, like that can be like a game changer for a lot of schools in Indonesia. And then the teachers can also, instead of like, they have to wait for their turn to get training that requires a lot of budget. They need to travel to the capital city or even like to Java. They can do it more independently. And we like the ecosystem at the moment. I want to share you that we launched emergency curriculum for COVID like 2 months ago, and then we created a platform for teacher learning to help teachers implement this emergency curriculum. And this is not like an instruction top down, but this is just like a very bottom up voluntary that the teachers can sign up and do this training. I just like challenged my staff, and I said, hey, we need to reach at least 100,000 by the end of the year. We started this in early October, and then in 10 days that number has been reached. Like all teachers volunteered to participate to this training that we designed through, like how we know best about the online platform, doing it in chunks, interactive, and etc. But then we've got like 100,000. We hit that number in 10 days. So what I see, I think there's a sense of hopefulness that this, not only the technology, but also the maturity, the reduced anxiety of our teachers to use this. So even they are in remote islands, they can learn anytime they want. They don't need to wait for their turns and get like the budget to do the training. Yes, then the problem then can there some schools, some areas don't have electricity still, about less than 10%, but still it's something, and internet. So this is an infrastructure for Indonesia that is needed to to reach out to this. So for the implementation problem, we cut all these admin and bureaucratic layers, so reaching directly to the teachers and schools.
Thank you, Dr.
That's
Iwan.
the hope.
It is very good to hear about teachers having access to technology or in remote area. I mean, just to share with you that recently we have a teacher seminar as well for Indonesia, and we partner with Telkomsel. So that shows that the teachers actually do get access to technology or through Telkomsel. So thank you very much. Just one other question for you, Dr. Iwan, is Indonesia being the 10th largest economy in the world, and then you have a big young population. Definitely you want to grow more in the world economy. So how important is it, you think, English is for Indonesia, and also how do you want to train your English language teachers?
Super important. I think this is a strategic investment for our students, and for being engaged in the global and understanding, first getting access, understanding, and then participating in global engagement of whatever, like the problems that we're facing together in this shared global village. And I think what needs to be done, I think one, and this is like the theme for teacher development in general too in Indonesia, which is about the quality. We want English teachers who can speak English well. We need to, and we've been talking to some partners, possible partners for us to be engaged. Cambridge is one of them. The benchmark that we want to see, and how we can provide these learning opportunities, right? So this is, for our teachers, it's about providing multiple learning opportunities for them to improve, because they are also learners. Teachers are learners, and they need to have to cultivate that motivation to learn. I think the most expensive element in learning is motivation. You can be like the smartest person in the world, but if you don't have any motivation, done. It's not going to happen. But even though potentially maybe you're not very smart, but if you have like the drive and willingness to learn, I think learning can happen fantastically. And we've seen this in students, and I think it's the same with teachers. So creating this learning ecosystem, I think for us, this motivation and enthusiasm to learn. And at the moment, we're seeing this with COVID too. Like teachers learn not because they want to get the certificate that will be counted as part of their career credit promotion, but because they want to solve problems, because we have problems and they want to solve problems, therefore they learn. So the motivation is more intrinsic. And I think this is for English teachers is the same. We're going to provide multiple learning opportunities for them, setting like the benchmark where it should be, and not having like just like learning at all in general, not like punish, but it's more like providing like the motivation for them, positive motivation to keep learning, because I think the key is always like to learn. We cannot stay still.
Thank you, Dr. Iwan. And Susan, we have one question for you. Being the Center Director for Simeo RALC, RALC would have given a lot of advice to many ministries in ASEAN. So what is the one piece of advice that you would give to ministries or regional Department of Education who wants to implement English language development or upskilling teachers program for their own territories or country?
Okay, actually, we are not officially consulting with governments as such, but we do meet many of the centers from all over the Simeo region, and they do share with us what you have just stated as the question. I think my general point is to echo what Pak Iwan said, is that the key to improving anything in education must lie with the teacher, and support and resources must be given for the teachers in learning. In this case, you're talking about using English, especially English as a language of communication. Of course, there's the content part and so forth. So essentially, I think the approach to take for different scale countries are quite different. But I think what was mentioned and shared for Indonesia, I think is the appropriate version we are advising. That is, you train maybe a core group who are so-called your master teachers. And obviously these are all well selected. And therefore they also will be also not only selected in terms of skills as emphasized, but also their motivation that they want to go back and share and spread this. So when they get the knowledge, they are very passionate and they go back to their contacts and then they will share it. And basically the skills will then be multiplied many-fold. So it depends on the master person who is the first trained, how effective they are in sharing. And actually, my point is that to people who consult with us, we found that this one model, if it stops only at one stage, may have limited impact if you don't monitor, as Dr. Iwan said, the implementation. That means you also need to check at the different stages of sharing. So you can see how effective that one master teacher is to share with one group, I don't know, 100,000s of clusters. And then after that, you also want to check, because they will probably in a huge country like Indonesia, cascade that further down. So again, there has to be support, coaching, mentoring, as well as checking, implementation checking at the next level down, where it spreads to another 1,000 schools and 1,000 teachers and so forth. So I think pay attention to the actual monitoring beyond just the first level. You also need to support the others in all the different stages, depending on the scale of your country, of course. That's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Iwan and Susan Leong. So just for me to conclude quickly, I have, to look at COVID-19, we know that it is a very challenging time, and the whole world is trying to cope with it daily, practically. But at the same time, the COVID pandemic has a positive influence on us. Just like what Dr. Iwan mentioned, it helps us to speed up that technology adoption, more or less force us to do so. There are some anxiety, of course, in the beginning, but now we learn to cope with it, like what we're doing now in this virtual conference. And then there are 2 words that I would say that is my takeaway, my personal takeaway on this topic: drive and motivation. So the drive and motivation of teachers or learners or even stakeholders or ministries are very, very important. Like Dr. Iwan, I can feel, even though I'm sitting in my home in Singapore, your energy, your positive energy, I could feel it when you present the Merdeka Belajar transformation. I mean, it is so much. We can, somebody put in the chat box that, they have goosebumps just listening to that presentation. So thank you very much for sharing your insight. And thank you also for considering Cambridge as one of your partners that will be in this Merdeka Belajar journey. Thank you. Over to you, Sonia.
Yes. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Iwan Syahril, Ms. Susan Leong, and Cheng Pierre for this session. We're going to finish it and continue to the next session. So I will over to our next moderator. It's George. Is it you? I over to you. Once again, thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. It's over to me,
please,
I think.
Thank you and keep safe. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, Martin.
Good morning, Cheng Pierre. Good to see you.
4 a.m. Thank you for waking up.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Martin Robinson. I work for Cambridge English, and I lead the development of our online automated assessments, including LinguaSkill. I'll be moderating for the next 2 hours. In the program, this is listed as 2 one-hour sessions, but we've now decided to introduce a panel discussion in the second hour. So our 2 speakers from Malaysia in the first session will join the speaker from Vietnam in the second session to form a panel which will discuss the topic localizing the CEFR. So please stay online for what promises to be a very informative discussion. So first, let me introduce our two very special guests from Malaysia. We are very honoured to have with us Professor Zuraida. Professor Zuraida is Professor at UTM University in Malaysia, as well as Adjunct Professor at UPSI and UMK universities. Importantly, she has worked as Special Advisor to the Ministry of Education in Malaysia on English language matters, and this has included, for the fourth time, being Chair of the National English Language Quality and Standards Council. Professor Zuraida is also the lead author of the Roadmap for English Language Education Reform in Malaysia. We also have special guest, Dr. Liliati Ismail. Dr. Liliati is Senior Lecturer at the Department of Language and Humanities Education at UPM University in Malaysia. She holds a PhD in the teaching of English as a second language from UPM, an MEd in TESOL from University, Malaysia, and a BEd in secondary education and English language teaching from the University of Exeter, UK. She has published numerous papers and presented in various conferences, including the London International Conference on Education at Churchill College, University of Cambridge in 2017. Dr. Liliati and her colleagues are recipients of research funding from Cambridge English Funded Research Programme Round 10 2020. Professor Zuraida will begin with relating English proficiency tests in Malaysian universities to the CEFR. And then Dr. Liliati will continue by discussing the impact of LinguaSkill on STEM undergraduate students' employability potential. So, over to Professor Zuraida.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for the introduction. First of all, I would like to thank Cambridge English for inviting me to present on this topic, which is really close to my heart. As you know, the title of my presentation is Relating English Proficiency Tests in Malaysian University to the CFR. I'm going to structure my presentation into two parts. In the first half of my presentation, I will describe how the project is part of the roadmap reform agenda to relate assessment to the CFR. And in the second half of my presentation, I will describe the project in terms of the aims, the stages of development, and the expected output in the form of 4 books on assessment, each devoted to a specific skill. And it is hoped that these publications will have a positive impact on assessment practice in higher education in Malaysia in particular. Next, please. Now, when we talk about reform in Malaysia and what this project is in relation to the reform, first of all, I would like to talk about the roadmap in brief. What is the roadmap? In the roadmap, which I co-write with my colleagues and academics in Malaysia, we identified a series of actions to be taken in order to improve English language education and student proficiency levels in Malaysia. And these include establishing evidence-based and realistic targets for us to achieve in 2025. As you can see that, we've set the target preschool, moving towards A1 at the end of preschool, primary at the end of primary, A2, secondary B1, post-secondary B2, and university B2, C1. Then the next action is for universities and people in the ministry, schools as well, people involved in the alignment, need to review and revise the curriculum and assessment, and then review classroom and training teachers. And my presentation is a contribution to the assessment part of the roadmap. So this project is actually an attempt to contribute to assessment But instead of reviewing or revising assessment or forms of assessment in public university, this project develops assessment documents to be used by individual universities to evaluate and revise their own tests. So we are giving the universities, we're empowering the university to do that. What we do is that we come out, the research group attempts, or rather, we are coming out with 4 books, each devoted to particular skills: reading, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. If you look at the roadmap here, if you look at it's a bit, can't see much, but let me just explain. Now, when students come from school, so in Malaysia, like in other country, the last connection to school is post-secondary. So after secondary, if they continue to university, then they've got to sit for a test, either the MUET or any other CFR aligned test. Of course, MUET is developed by MPM, which is a Malaysian body, government organization. So after that, they're supposed to enter university. And if you look at on your left, we have set the target entering university, that is at the end of post-secondary B2. But as you know, I think most people in Malaysia know that there are different kinds of university in Malaysia. We have research universities, focus universities, and comprehensive university. It is not fair sometimes to set too high a target for universities, for example, focus or comprehensive university. So we decided for entry requirement B1 or B2, but university can set their own if they so wish. But for now, B1, B2. As they enter university, going through the education, through their programs, to the English language, particularly we're talking about English language courses. So they're going through the English language courses, then they should graduate. If you look at university, they're B2, C1. So we target B2, C1 as the exit target for Malaysia. Remember, this is a target for target in 2025. So we are setting the target and we are moving towards that. What this means for Malaysia is that in order to have the university, school and university, even school, for example, in order to help school to achieve that, to help students to achieve the target, we've got to change not just our curriculum review, not just our curriculum assessment, also classroom practices. And the aim of this system reform is to align the education in Malaysia from preschool up to university to the CFR. That is our overall aim. Now, how does assessment come into that? If you look at the title on the left-hand side, at the top there, here I'm going to talk about assessment of English language proficiency in higher education in the context of education reform. Now, in any kind of reform, one has to build capacity. So when we talk about this project, it is not just about producing 4 volumes in order to have universities to align the assessment to the CFR. It's also about building capacity. I'm going to talk about that later. More importantly is that the assessment must be integrated. So curriculum is the core. Curriculum must be integrated with classroom practice, must be integrated with assessment. So it is an integration. So that's why we call the whole thing the ecosystem for English language higher education in Malaysia, where we are not just talking about curriculum, classroom practice, learning materials, and assessment. We are talking about beyond classroom learning as well, but that is not my focus today. Now, when we did the roadmap, we developed the roadmap beginning with survey and pre-planning. Then we produced the roadmap, which is the language and education planning document. That's our roadmap. And from there, we implement, we monitor, and we evaluate. So can we go to the next slide, please? The project itself is funded by the Higher Education Division, and the project owner is UPSI. UPSI holds the money to fund this project, and this is a kind of collaborative partnership with 15 universities working together, a representative from different universities, 15 public universities working together in order to produce this document. And I must say this is a really, really difficult undertaking, but we are moving on. Go on to the next slide, please. The overall aim of this project. The overall aim of this project is to relate the tests produced by test developers for English proficiency courses offered by different universities to the CFR. That's our overall aim. What is our immediate aim? The immediate aim is to help test developers to produce appropriate task. Remember, it is not appropriate task, but appropriate task. Appropriate task to assess the 4 language skills at different proficiency levels, in different contexts of use, in personal, public, educational, or occupational domain in higher education. And as I said just now, we expect students to enter university at B1 or B2. Of course, there are students who may not achieve that target. So because of that, when we target the target for assessment, when they finish a course, we have 4 targets, A2, which means, let's say, A1 students are accepted, which we hope not, but let's say, then he will be brought up to A2, and he will sit on A2 paper. So A2 students on entry, then will follow a course and take a B1 course and will achieve B1. And another is B2, so enter university at B1. Then the course, he will follow a course, then will get a B2 CFR level, and then C1. So, but we hope that at the end of their journey, that students are able to complete their undergraduate program and on exit achieving B2 C1 targets. That's a tall order, but as we say, we have to be positive. And I hope that, with the help from their teachers and the government support us as well with money, all sorts of help in order to realize our dream and aspiration. What's the longer term? I think this is more important. The longer term aim is to create a positive impact on language assessment practice in higher education in Malaysia. I'm going to talk about that in detail soon. So this is important because when we come up with something new, particularly reform, one of the most important that come to our mind is that the reform must have some impact, and this impact should be positive on whatever practice that we are, on our existing practice, so that at the end of that journey, that we will have improved our practice, and the result of it, we will produce quality education. Quality education needs quality teachers, need quality assessment, as well as need quality classroom practice. Can we go to the next one, please? Yep. Now, the development of this project, I divide the development into 5 stages. The first 2 stages are with the research group. Stage 3, 4, 5. That will be with the university. Let me explain what these stages are. Now, when we are developing, when we are in the process of developing or producing these 4 books, 4 volumes of assessment, we need to ensure that the team members are familiar with the CFR. So this is what we call this stage of CFR familiarization. You must remember, CFR is then, when when we started about 2 years ago, it was really new for most of the participants. So they had to read a lot and assign a lot of work, assignment to read, assign a lot of tasks for them to read and familiar themselves with the CFR. And it is, as we develop the document, they become more familiar. And I think it's very important because knowledge can only be part of us when we actually do it. If you don't do it, knowledge, you will not take ownership of the knowledge. So it is by doing it, we make it part of ourselves. That's why I thought the best way for us to give knowledge to people is to make them do it. And they have to produce the document, the 4 documents, yeah. So familiarity with the CFR can-do descriptors. In particular, that's very important for this project in particular, for them to be familiar with the CFR can-do descriptors. So we use now the companion, the 2020 volume, which we use quite a lot. We use in 2018, 2020 volume, and of course we use the CFR Blue Book and Cambridge 4 sets of books that help us a lot in terms of theory as well as in terms of helping us to come up with a construct for speaking, listening, reading, writing at A2, B1, B2, C1. While we are familiarizing ourselves with the CFR, we are actually producing the 4 volumes. So so it's such a long process because the participants need to know the CFR, because one cannot apply unless one knows the CFR pretty well. So that takes quite a bit of time. And they are also writing the books, the 4 volumes. So we hope to submit the first to Cambridge. Cambridge will look at our books, of course. Thank you very much. Yeah, we hope in December, inshallah, we hope that we will be able to do the first one. Will be writing, followed by other skills as well. Now, once Cambridge have looked at the books and gave their comments, we will do the rewriting and look at them again, and hopefully that's okay. Then we will then start engaging with the stakeholders, and the stakeholders are our lecturers in the universities. So that's when then from there, we hope that they will develop the task specs, yeah, then set the task based on their test specs, and then, of course, implement the test that they have set. So, but just to remind listeners again, participants again, that we are not developing the test. I don't see the need for that because each university is very independent and it has its own mission and vision. It wants to be free to do what it thinks should be done for its university. So we don't control in that sense. But what we do is that we develop task specs. Yeah, we come out with construct definition, and from there we come out with a model, or rather samples of task specs. Let me just explain a bit, especially the number 2, the second stage. As I said just now, we expect to produce 4 volumes, this set of 4 volumes on assessing listening, speaking, reading, and writing abilities, so that this book can serve as a guide for teachers and lecturers in universities who are involved in setting English language proficiency tests for the English courses they offer in their own universities. So different universities have got their own programs, their own courses. So what we want is to help them develop the knowledge, to set tasks, and then put these tasks together to form a test. Yeah, I will talk about that later as well. And the book also defined the construct for listening, speaking, reading, and writing at different levels. We describe the content of test tasks in task specification, and we also include sample tests from CE, and we analyze the sample tests and relate them to the task spec, bringing out the features, the characteristics of the test that make this particular test, for example, listening and A2 listening, which differentiated from a B1 listening, a B2 listening, or C1 listening. We hope this information, this knowledge is clear enough for our readers, of course. And we also identify assessment criteria for the assessment of assessment of not for reading and listening, but for spoken and written performance. And these are just some general discussion and some proposals, and that will be included in the volume for speaking and writing. And it is hoped that members of the team hope that these books can be used as a resource to construct language tests linked to the CFR. What we hope is that for universities to look at the 4 volumes, particularly the task bags, and turn these task bags into test bags. Of course, there are components in the task bags which will not be included. So in the development of the test bags, they will add other components such as text length, duration of the test, which are not included in the task bag because we are not developing a test, we are developing a task. What we hope is that what I think is important that we did in this project, I think, is to use best practice that is used for high stakes tests, for low stakes tests. Our test is a test, forms of assessment are low stakes tests. So what we do is that we use what you call theory and practice for high stake tests like MUET, TOEFL, IELTS, and adopt that practice to our own way of doing things and produce task bags for low stakes tests to be used by universities to assess their students when they complete or while they are doing the course in order to find out their CFR level. So if you remember, when you look at the diagram I showed, the exit point, on exit, you're supposed to get B2, C1. But we leave it at university, where the university want to develop their own exit test or to take any available test or use available tests, that's up to university. Most important is that this test must be CFR aligned, and our documents are not for that. For us, is when they are doing their course, then they need to come up with the test, and these documents are meant for that. Final words. Now, my final words is this. Malaysia has embarked on a visionary English language education reform, aligning the English language to the CFR, which is indeed an enormous undertaking. It's massive. And this massive undertaking is supposed to be for a duration of 11 years, within a duration of 11 years, from 2015, when we first submitted the roadmap in December 2015, to 2025. Now, this project, our project here, the assessment project in higher education, is part of the reform, but it is more specific. It is specific to assessment and specific in the context of higher education. And to succeed in the reform and achieve the proficiency targets for 2025, either at school, primary, either preschool, primary, secondary, post-secondary, university, we have to make sure that actions planned in the roadmap are put in place. And must say that Cambridge has helped us a lot to put the plan in place, particularly with the 5-year collaboration program with CE, MOE and CE, and that they implemented, these actions are implemented with quality in mind. That's very important, with quality in mind, and then we must make sure that we do what we promise. Yeah. So quality here, when I talk about quality is achieved by the different actors involved at different levels of work. So if it's lecturers at the level of universities, yeah, if it is MOE, of course, at higher level, national level, And people, all these actors, us, all of us, must work closely in collaboration. And more importantly, we must do the right things and do things right. I think that's very important. Not just do the right things and do things right. Only then we can succeed in achieving our aim, that is to achieve the targets by the end of 2025. Thank you very much. Sorry, Martin, did I take such a long time?
No. It's perfect, Professor. I was interested. I'm just seeing lots of comments coming up in the chat saying really informative, excellent information, really interesting. Thank you very much. I've got one question in the Q&A, if I can ask you. From Eric Spencer Benedict. Says, Professor Zoraida, what are the strategies planned by the ELTC to reduce the English language proficiency gap between the students of rural schools and that of the urbans?
Perhaps ELTC should answer that, but I can say something of that nature. The thing is that ELTC has introduced what we call the HIP, Highly Immersive Program. And this highly immersive program is to encourage students to use the language, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom, and to make them feel comfortable with the language. And what I have found so far, I attended sessions conducted by ELTC, I found that HIP is very popular with students in the rural areas, because what the HIP program does is improve their confidence in using the language. And when they use a language, then they feel more confident and start using the language. And they feel that, and also they take ownership of the language. So this is one of the things that I think, because sometimes, especially those in the rural areas, they don't have contact, they don't have exposure to English like those people and those students living in KL especially. So they've got to have this contact all the time. So if we have this program, targeted program, and make sure that we involve the teachers, we involve the whole school, not just the whole school, the whole community, and make it as part of something which is not, it is something that's part of us. So when you do it from the heart, I always tell people, if you do it from the heart, it is not from here. You've got to plan from here, of course. When you do it from the heart and you really care, when you care, students know you care. We are human beings. We know whether people care about us or not. If you show that to the students and tell them it is okay to make mistakes, and also tell the teachers, don't treat this as something which is in addition to what you have. Treat this as part of your being as a teacher. You love your students. You love your work. So what is this additional thing just to make your students use English language? So when we talk about, as I said before, to improve, it's not just a plan. We can come up with a plan, beautiful plan. We can come up with a methodology, beautiful, really good, very innovative and so on. But if we have not captured the heart of those that we want to help and those who should give the help, then the whole thing will not succeed.
Thank you,
for
Professor.
me, the most important thing is the heart.
Yeah, thank you. Very well said. And we all know that you care and you do it from the heart. So very well said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's move on. We'll see Professor Zoraida again in 1 hour's time in the panel discussion. Yeah. So let's move on to Dr. Liliati. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are now. So my name is Liliati Ismail, and I'm from University Putra Malaysia. Today, I'll be presenting a research entitled Impact of Linguaskill on STEM Undergraduate Students' Employability Potential. And this research is carried out with funding from the Cambridge English Funded Research Program, round 10, 2020. So the following are members of the research team. So we are all TESOL lecturers from the Faculty of Educational Studies University Putra Malaysia. We have Professor Dr. Arsha Abdul Samad, Associate Professor Dr. Abu Bakar Razali, Dr. Norin Nordin, and myself. And we have been working on this project since March this year, and we expect to complete it in May 2021. So the following is my presentation outline for today. So I will be talking about the background of the study, the research objectives, the research methods and results, as well as the discussion and conclusion for the study. So the adoption of the CEFR in the language curriculum in Malaysia points to the need for CEFR-aligned English language qualifications for Malaysian students at all levels of education, including tertiary education. And I think Prof. Zuraida has already talked about this as well. And various efforts have been taken by the Malaysian government through the Ministry of Education, or MOE, and other relevant ministries and organizations to ensure the successful adoption of the CFR to improve proficiency levels among Malaysian students and to align our English language assessment to a widely recognized international standard, the CFR. So our concern in this study is the need for a reliable, valid, and appropriate CFR-aligned assessment for final year undergraduates who are hoping to join the workforce. And LinguaSkill has the potential to do this. And through the funding we received, as well as our engagement with the LinguaSkill agent in Malaysia and the head of Cambridge, Malaysia, we have had the opportunity to use LinguaSkill for this assessment purpose. So LinguaSkill is a relatively new test, and many are not yet familiar with it. For example, out of the 192 participants in our study, only 30 said that they have heard of the LinguaSkill before. So that's 15.6% of the participants. Whereas the others, the other 162 participants, which makes up 84.4%, have not heard of it before. So though many of the participants were not familiar with the test, we believe it has great appeal and use as it is aligned to the CFR. And like what Prof. Zuraida as well has mentioned earlier, CFR features prominently in the language education reform in Malaysia to describe language abilities and for teaching and learning and assessment purposes. We also feel that LinguaSkill is most appropriate for this study as one of its purposes is to measure candidates' levels of English for job or development opportunities in companies. So the fact that the test is also powered by artificial intelligence with results provided within 48 hours also makes it an attractive option. In fact, the results are often generated even shorter than 48 hours. So it is also an online test, which would potentially make it convenient for test takers as they can take the test anywhere and at any time. So the following are the objectives of the research to identify how the current graduating batch from the STEM fields in UPM, which is the university we're teaching at, University Putra Malaysia, would fare in the test, to gauge their perceptions of the test, to identify whether LinguaSkill results would influence prospective employers when considering job applications, and if the results of the test have any bearing on the successful candidate's job offers in terms of remuneration, job scope, and other aspects, and also to identify whether LinguaSkill results match the employer's expectations of the participants' skills in reading, writing, listening, and speaking in English. So we had 192 participants who were final year students from selected STEM-based faculties at UPM, and they sat for the LinguaSkill test in August 2020. So they sat for all three papers, listening and reading, speaking and writing. Yep. So the faculties involved were the Faculty of Biotechnology and Biomolecular Sciences, Faculty of Computer Science and Information Technology, Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Food Science and Technology, Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, and the Faculty of Science. So the number of students from each faculty ranged from 30 to 34. So the research activities that have been carried out involved the first phase of the study, which is to gauge the STEM undergraduate students' CFR level as determined by the LinguaSkill test. Also, the participants completed a questionnaire via Google form to gauge their perceptions of the LinguaSkill test. Oops, sorry. So the initial plan was for the participants to sit for the test in the computer labs at the university. But then, as we all know, COVID-19 pandemic hit and everyone had to stay at home. In Malaysia, we had the movement control order. So at the time, the students could not come to the faculty or to the university. So they had to sit for the lingual skill test from home, via remote proctoring. But this is always an option with lingual skill. It can be done from home via remote proctoring. But usually there's a choice. You can do it in test centers or from other locations. But in this case, everyone had to do it from home, via remote proctoring. So now we go on to the results. So as you can see in the table, this is the table for the lingual skill overall results. So as you can see, a majority of the participants were at B2 level of proficiency. So 72.5% of the students obtained B2, while 17.6% were at B1 level of proficiency. So this would indicate that they are independent users of English at upper intermediate, B2, and intermediate level, B1. So only 9.9% of the participants obtained C1 and above to indicate that they are proficient users of English. So for the lingual skill, the highest level is C1 and above. Now this table 2 here, shows the lingual skill results based on the 4 skills. So the results show that for the listening test, more than half the students, which is 64.1%, obtained C1 and above, while for the reading test, 46.4% obtained. However, for speaking, only 13% of the participants obtained C1 and above, and for writing, only 15.1% obtained C1 and above. For the speaking test, most of the students obtained B1 and B2 at 43.2%. While for the writing test, almost half of them, 49.5%, obtained B2 level. So the participants appear to perform better for the receptive skills, listening and reading, compared to the productive skills, speaking and writing. So all the participants also filled out the test perception questionnaire after receiving their results, which was within even less than 48 hours of taking the test. And the crux of the questionnaire were sections C and D. So section C focuses on their perceptions of the lingual skill test taking experience. So if you look at, and while section D, which I will present after this, focuses on anxiety, motivation, and confidence levels related to the test. So both sections use a 5-point Likert scale ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. There was also an open-ended section in the questionnaire for the test takers to give their comments about the test and test taking experience. So some of the key results will be presented here. So what we're looking at now are the pie charts, which represent the key results from section C. So as you can see, the statement that the instructions for lingual skill are clear and easy to follow recorded the highest percentage of students who agree and strongly agree with the statement at 87.5%. A high percentage of participants also strongly agree that lingual skill appears to correctly measure their reading ability and overall English language ability, and the duration of the test was also deemed as appropriate. So this is the results, the key results from section D. So we're looking at results related to their confidence and motivation levels, when it comes to taking the test and their confidence in the test itself. So the highest percentage of participants at 84.9% agree and strongly agree that they felt confident with the certification for lingual skill because it is a test by Cambridge Assessment English UK. And the second highest percentage at 82.8% was for participants who agree and strongly agree that they feel motivated to apply for a job with the lingual skill test certification. And a high percentage of the participants, 73.4%, also agree and strongly agree that they are confident that the linguist skill test result would help them apply for a job. Okay, so this is the analysis. These are some results based on the analysis of the qualitative feedback received in the questionnaire. So the results generally show that remote proctoring of the test posed several challenges as participants were taking the test from home. So for some of them, they had issues with weak or unstable internet connection, which negatively affected their test-taking experience. A few also had problems with their microphones as they were using their own devices. As you can see, these are some of the comments the students made related to challenges in taking the test from home. So some of the things they said were they faced some, one student said he faced some difficulty during the test and disturbance as having tests from home, and doing the test online is very challenging due to the connection. And the third one is also about connection and system problem. And so you see that many of it is about, internet connection. Yeah, some of the students said these, However, many of the test takers that taking the test was a positive new experience for them. They felt that the test measured what it was intended to measure. The content and context of the test was generally suitable. It is user-friendly, and they felt quite relaxed taking the test. And for those who had good internet access at home, it was a smooth and easy process. So these were some of the things the test takers reported, which indicated that it was a good experience for them. A few even picked up on the fact that it was an adaptive test. So the test takers would receive different questions, and the level of difficulty of questions received are based on their performance in the preceding question. And this was interesting and new to them. Many also tried out the sample test before sitting for the linguist skill and found that these sample tests are useful in helping them familiarize themselves with the format of the test. So these are some of the comments the participants made. So maybe I'll just read the first three. So one participant said, I like the adaptive test where it depends on our answer from one question. Another said, I'm confident the test and results is easy and worth it. So generally that's the pattern, showing that it was a new experience and also a positive one for them. So here are some of the key points and conclusion of the study. So majority of the test takers are at B2 level of proficiency, 72.5%. So like what Prof. Zuraida mentioned earlier, for our university leavers, meaning our graduates bachelor degree level, they're expected to be at B2 or C1 level. And we also noticed in this test that whereas 122 test takers obtained C1 and above for listening, only 25 obtained C1 and above for speaking. And so the participants appeared to have performed better for listening and reading compared to speaking and writing. And I think the results here point to the employ teaching and learning strategies that would help learners improve on speaking and writing skills, because these are the two skills that appear to require greater focus on, and improving on these two skills could also help improve their overall CFR score, which could potentially have positive effects on their employability potential. So the test takers had an overall positive experience taking the lingual skill test. Some test takers prefer to take the test at the test taking center as opposed to taking it from their own locations with remote proctoring, mainly because they felt that they were at a disadvantage when taking the test from home due to unstable or weak internet connection and some perceived problems with their device, their microphones and so on. So generally, test takers also express confidence in the test and that they are motivated to take the test for job employment purposes and for application for postgraduate studies. So the following is our future plan with regards to this research. So for the next stage of research, because the students have graduated, they currently graduated and they've been job seeking in the past few months. So in the next phase of the research, managers who were involved in the selection process for the successful job applications of the participants in this study will be asked to complete a questionnaire. So the purpose of the questionnaire is to gauge if and how the lingual skill test results affected the employer's decisions in the selection process for employment, and if the results appear to match their expectations of the participants' listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. Several managers will also be interviewed to obtain more comprehensive insights, and the data will be analyzed quantitatively as well as qualitatively. So we would like to acknowledge that this presentation reports on research funded through the Cambridge English Funded Research Program, Round 10, 2020. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Liliati. That was really interesting. I've seen some comments coming up in the chat. Excellent case study, really interesting. Just another one popping up now. Very nice, Ma. Excellent. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions here in the Q&A, if you don't mind. Okay, there's one here from, another one from Eric Spencer Benedict. Salam, Dr. Liliati. How do you validate your assessment whether your sample has really achieved a certain level, C1, for example, or not?
Okay, thank you, Martin. And thank you to Mr. Who is that again? Sorry.
Eric. I think.
Eric, right. So thank you, Eric, for the question. The lingual skill has been validated by Cambridge Assessment English through their validation processes. So we're using this existing test from Cambridge Assessment English to assess our students' CFR level and later on to gauge whether the results or the test would affect or have an impact on their employability potential.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. And Eric, actually, if you just Google Cambridge English Lingual Skill, go on the website there, you'll find lots of information on the validity of the test. And especially, there's an article there on the validity of the speaking test, which will be really interesting for you. Yeah. Okay, we have another question here from, if I can pronounce it correctly, Normazida Chemusa. Says, lingual skill is used to evaluate students' proficiency. I think this is a question for clarification here. It says, after the students go through the English classes in the university? Is the test carried out when students are in year 3?
Okay, thank you for the question, Masnida. Well, this, for the purpose of our research, we've used lingual skill as an exit test for our STEM students, for students from STEM-based faculty. But this is just for the purpose of our research. In real life, you can take lingual skill at any time for various reasons, for employability, to gauge your proficiency level. Am I right, Martin? Because I'm sure Martin is very well versed with lingual skill.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. But we're using lingual skill for the purpose of our research to gauge the final year students' level, CFR level, proficiency level based on the CFR.
Yep, okay. I have another question here. Do you think the results you obtained on the participants' performance in lingual skill would have positive washback effects on the teaching practices at the university?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think we want to see more of our graduates obtain C1 and above. Right, so right now we see 75.6% are at B2 level, which is an acceptable level for our graduates. But I think the washback effect is that we will have to examine how we can help our students make greater strides in enriching or enhancing their language ability. And from the results, we find that students didn't fare well in the speaking and writing test. So perhaps these are the skills that we need to give a greater emphasis on. So looking back at our teaching practices and our course outline, tasks we use, class assessment methods that we use, like what Prof. Zuraida said just now, we're hoping the 4 volumes that they produce will also help us to align the tasks that we use in the classroom to the CFR, and also our teaching strategies. We'll improve on these to help our students enhance their communicative ability, their communicative competence, their communicative strategies, so that I think we can get students who will get even better results, maybe C1 and later on perhaps even C2.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to ask just one more question about, it may be interesting for our audience. You mentioned because of COVID-19 that a lot of the students had to take the test at home using remote proctoring.
Right.
And I know there are lots of different, people have had different experiences with remote proctoring during lockdown. And I was wondering if you could give us a little more information about how it went with your candidates, with your participants.
Right. So for the remote proctoring, we engaged with Sasbadi Malaysia. So Sasbadi Sdn Bhd is the sole agent for LinguaSkill in Malaysia. So we engaged with them and they trained invigilators to invigilate the test remotely. So we had 8 sessions over a series of 4 days. So we had the morning session for one group of students, the afternoon session for another group of students, and we had 6 invigilators who invigilated the test taking from our campus. So we got permission for the invigilators to come to our lab, our computer lab, and they proctored the test, invigilated the test from our computer labs. So we used Zoom. So they gave instructions on Zoom and they invigilated via Zoom while the students took the test online.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to check with our controllers here at the moment. Are we ready to go into the presentation from Vietnam?
We've got another 8 minutes, Martin, and there are plenty more questions.
Okay. Yep. Sure. Yep. Yep. We can do that.
Perhaps there are questions for Prof. Zuraida as well. I'm not
yeah,
sure.
there are questions for Prof. There are definitely always questions for Professor Zuraida, I think. Professor Zuraida is still with us? Yep. Okay. I'm going to go back up here. I have a question here from someone you know very well, Professor. Hanan Khalifa. Okay. Professor Zuraida, the work you are doing with assessment in higher education is very interesting. Do you foresee any challenges in the uptake of the concept? Also, while you are developing the volumes, were there any lessons to be learned that you care to share with us?
Oh, thank you, Hanan. That's yes, very, very good question there. Yeah, I do have a bit of a worry, especially when after we have finished the volume and you all have assessed the volume and to implement it in the different universities. So what we need to do is to engage with different universities. So we've got a representative from 15 universities. Unfortunately, not all universities have representative. That makes it more difficult. But because of that, we hope that our members, our own representatives, will now engage with their own head of department as well as the dean to tell them what they're doing, so that prepare them for this. Because I think there is, as I said before, there is a bit of a confusion or a bit of they thought that we are producing a test. And I think for us to produce a test for all universities is impossible, I would say. It's not. So I think that kind of misconception, misinterpretation or misunderstanding what the project is all about, that we need to do that first. And then we need to also, you see, because this thing, because it's totally different from what we thought we would be doing. When I first started, I thought, we come up with test packs and we did also. So it is for us as well, is the learning process. When we first started, we thought it's going to produce test packs. And I said, if we produce test packs, where are the tests? What tests are we going to test? Because different universities got different programs. It's not possible, And then also, when we read the CFR descriptors, we found very difficult to understand. There are lots of things which we cannot make clear we don't understand, put it this way, but we don't have anyone to advise us. So we discussed and said, okay, this is what we need to do. So that's when I thought, okay, what we need to do, we need to separate the skills, identify the skills, all the 4 skills, put in different volumes, like what Cambridge did, a bit different. And I say, you all need to know some theory here, because sometimes with that theory, we cannot explain why we're doing it. So I said, oh, you've got to read all these 4 volumes. So all of them have your book, CE's book, reading, speaking, and all that, with the companion volume as well, and the blue book. And they started reading, and it's, oh my God, So then we learn all this through that process of learning, and then after that, we look at Weir's framework, very detailed, and how you all have used it to develop reading and so on. But now I think it's becoming a bit clearer. So now that's why they are writing it, and I'm rewriting with them as well. So it is not just them learning, it is I'm learning as well. So that's the beauty of doing a research, in that the process is difficult, of course. Sometimes you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? But I think one thing that we need to know, that in order for us to develop knowledge is not an easy process. Yeah? It's not a touch and go kind of thing. So for 2 years, they have been with me. I think some of them, I say, oh my goodness, she's still at it. But I think the process, the more important for this, the output is one thing. Yeah? People always think of the output, the 4 books, because people see that. What they don't see is this, from the point when you begin, that's where the journey is, and you develop along the way. And I hope that universities will use this, not positive. Get in contact with this group of people who have gone through that journey, and use them in order to help you to align not just your assessment, but also curriculum, because they have learned a lot. Because for you to produce that volume, you must have understood something. Yeah, you must have done something. Of course, we don't know how good it is. You all will have to look at the work. But as we said, you learn, you relearn everything. What a construct is, how to assess that construct, what reliability is, what validity is, all these things which we know only when we read, yet we do not use it. But when you start using it, you realize, oh my God, these terms that we have been using in our theses or in your writing, you realize, oh my goodness, have I really understood what they mean? You see what I mean? So I think that's one takeaway that I think is very important, that you need to dirty your hands, I said. Yep. Dirty your hands, do the work. Then you come out of it knowing something. If you're just you're going to think that knowledge is going to come to you, no way. So that's one thing that we learn. Another thing that we learned, that when you write somehow, when people start writing, it's always this process of rewriting, and you can get on your nerves actually, because you keep on rewriting. But that process we do not appreciate, whereas that is a process that your knowledge takes shape in your brain. It concretizes in your brain, so that when we're supposed to do the rollout, these people can explain what it is all about, because I can be going everywhere. So by the time they submit to Cambridge, you all give to us, they can bring this document and independently tell them, share the knowledge that they have learned. And because they are part of the whole process of learning, they can do it. So this is part of capacity building. Capacity building is not just a one-off kind of thing. Yeah. It is a long process, so that we actually build capacity, not just in words, in actions. Yeah. So that is what I learned from this whole thing, and I hope my team members, and we become friends. I think that's the best thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Once again, very wise words from you, Professor Zuraida.
Thank you, Hanan.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're now going to move from Malaysia to Vietnam. But just for all those in our audience, Professor Zuraida and Dr. Liliati will be rejoining us in approximately 25 or 30 minutes' time for a panel discussion. So please stay on. Okay, so now let me introduce our next special guest from Vietnam. Good morning or good afternoon. Okay, Miss Hugh Nguyen is Director of the National Foreign Languages Project, which is part of the Ministry of Education and Training in Vietnam. Ms. Hugh has engaged in a wide range of national